Welcome to the webinar.
Good afternoon, everyone. So glad to be here today. My name is Rob Simonetti. I'm a project architect with SWBR, a design firm up in Rochester, New York. And I'm also the SAGE president currently. I've had the luck of working with EFA and SAGE on the design showcase jury for about 7 or 8 years. Recently have been the coordinator on SAGE's behalf for our effort with selecting the jury. I'm really excited to be here today with this group of panelists. They've all have winning projects from the 2020 Design Showcase, and each has a huge amount of experience and value they bring to senior living and they're going to bring to us today. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves when we get to their project. Regarding SAGE, SAGE members have access to free webinars every month. We currently have some 50 webinars recorded and have everyone has access to those at the website. Also, SAGE members enjoy a 10% discount at the EFA conference registration. And the EFA conference registration price right now with the 10% discount, the discount more than covers SAGE's membership. So it's really a great value. As a reminder, attendees will be muted during this webinar, and the webinar will be recorded, and you will each be able to receive the recording sometime early next week. SAGE is a provider for AIA CES, so credits are earned on completion of this course and will be reported to AIA CES for AIA members. Certificates of completion for both members and non-members are available on request. If you would need one, please contact Lori with SAGE. So our course today, our webinar, 2020 EFA Design Showcase, a presentation of industry-leading design excellence. The webinar will highlight the award-winning projects from this year's Design Showcase. Representatives from winning teams will share their unique projects, highlighting the challenges they encountered and the design solutions implemented. We will learn about design attributes, challenges, solutions employed to create award-winning environments. We'll understand the innovative industry and design trends that represent important concepts to incorporate into future environments. And we'll learn how senior housing providers are positively impacting resident quality of life and the experience for family and staff. And additionally, along the way, we hope that you will pick up important information regarding the submission process for EFA and tips for making a great submission should you choose to submit this next year. The Environments Raging Showcase 2021 call is currently out, so reservations are due November 10th. If you would like to submit a project for next year's showcase, you have until November 10th to register, and then you have until December 8th to actually make the presentation submission. So there's still plenty of time. Hopefully some of you who submit will next year be on this panel describing your project on a webinar, as well as each year at the Environments Raging Conference, we do a presentation of the winners there as well. So there's a lot of great recognition. And just the process of putting together a submission, I believe is really valuable for the team to sort of understand and really articulate the design aspects of their project and the important pieces of it, which then they can then carry forward to future projects. A little bit about the showcase jury process. Each year, a jury is selected. SAGE helps with the jury selection. There are about 16 jurors. The makeup of the jury is architects, interior designers, providers, and then consultants, regulators, educators, and consultants to the senior housing industry. Each year, the jury starts by doing a virtual review of all the projects. So each team member gets, say, 15, 20 submissions, reviews them electronically, and then each scores project based on the competition metrics of aesthetics, experience, and collaboration, innovation, and operations and well-being. With all of those submissions scored virtually, Environments for Aging then tabulates those scores, and the highest scoring projects, typically 12, sometimes 15, then go to a live jury process. And this is where the jurors will get together, typically in January, typically at a previous winner's project, and then really hash it out over the next 2 days, about 8 hours over 2 days. We'll break up into teams, 4 teams, each team having representatives from each of the disciplines. So it's a really balanced teams. The teams then drill down into those 10 or 12 high scoring finalists and make their own recommendations at the end of one day. Then the second day, all the 4 teams come back together and then deliberate on how to award of merit and honorable mentions. And I can say the jury process is intense. There are, people on both sides of the aisle, let's say, and they bring their experience and their wisdom to each. They are really insightful, are able to dig deep into the submissions. So it's really important that the submissions are well done, because these guys look deep, let's say that. But in the end, the 16 of us get together and make a decision on the final projects, making sure and understanding that no project is perfect, but the award of merit winners, we really want to be hitting on 3 to 4 of those competition metrics. And the honorable mentions, also fantastic projects, typically have at least 1 or 2 of those metrics they really stand out in and are worth bringing to people's attention and publishing in a special way. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jill to talk about our first project, which is this year's only Award of Merit winner, BRIO, a Wesley Life community.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you so much. And I wanted to say hello to all of you. I am SAGE's vice president, so I work quite a bit with Rob being the president of SAGE. And so you might recognize me from the other webinars, as I'm most of the time the moderator for most of our webinars. I do want to ask you guys, we might be having some issues with microphones. And so if there's ever a time where you can't hear us talk, just type it in the Q&A of a question, or better yet, if everyone opens up their chat button, it's at the bottom of the screen, and then so you can have the chat off on the right and see any messages that we might be talking to all of you. If you can't hear something or miss something or anything like that, it's easier to communicate that way. But again, thank you, Rob.
Jill,
and your explanation. Yes.
Jill, the chat's actually turned off for webinars, so it's just through the Q&A that they can do that. Yep.
So it's just the Q&A. All right, well, there you go, guys. Type in your messages in the Q&A then. Thank you, Lori. So Rob, you did mention the process of the jury, and for us to have won the Award of Merit, it blows us away. We are so excited and so honored for this, because we know that this jury is so hard. They are so stringent on everything they're looking at for details. And so for us to have won this is just so monumental, and we're so honored. I can't stress it enough. And I do want to say too, that as Rob mentioned, you're going to get a copy of this recorded webinar, but you'll also get a copy of these slides. So I'm going to go through these slides very quickly of our project, and I'm going to miss a whole bunch. And so this will give you the opportunity to zoom in and get the details on the floor plan that you might want to see that you can't see because I'm zipping through. Rob, you've given me less than 8 minutes to go through this project, so I'm going to go through it quickly. The basics on this first slide that you're going to see is it is BRIO as a Wesley Life community, and Wesley Life is the operator. Oh, we lost the slide there. This image is showing you actually the rear landscape. It's showing you the context here of the independent living off on the right, the main central area in the center, and then all of the skilled care happening off on the left. You can go to the next slide, Rob. And Rob, you've muted yourself, I think. So here is the site layout, and to give you the details and to zip through this really quick, let me show you the basics that everyone cares about in the beginning here. Exactly, 174,727 square feet. It's on 22 acres. It's serving 123 residents. You can see the breakdown of the apartments there. This is a community that is a CCRC. It's serving all types of care. So the continuum of care, independent living, assisted living, skilled care, including skilled care memory support, end of life, and late stage Alzheimer's. In this site plan, you can see how close the residential neighborhoods are. So this is positioned right within a residential neighborhood, and it's not on a very, very busy road, although it looks like that, but it's very, you can go to the next slide. It's very residentially. And this is the overall floor plan. This is where I'm saying you could zoom in later and read all the details, but the basics here is that on the top left is the independent living tower, 3 stories tall. On the bottom left is the assisted living apartments. In the center is all of the common space that serves all of the care levels. And then in the top right is the memory support and Alzheimer's skilled care unit. And the bottom right is the TCU, as well as long-term care, as well as end of life. Go to the next slide. So to take advantage of this as a SAGE presentation and to come to you with SAGE principles and using this as an educational tool, I'm going to point out things that are done differently in this project that we learned from. And Rob, you can review in the jury's comments later if this was what attracted them to this project and really made heads nod or something. So in this floor plan, this is showing the skilled care, so the long-term care in the yellow, as well as the short stay rehab happening in that peachy tone on the right, and giving this its unique identity as a household model, 20 units, all clustered around a central common area. And so wherever you exit your unit, the floor plan is intuitive. It's giving you a place to go. It's making you feel active and in part of an activity if you wish, and just to go walking and network with making friends with the community. The blue area up on top of this slide is showing you the therapy and the wellness center. So its direct adjacency is crucial to be next to that short stay therapy where they're going to therapy every single day. You can go to the next slide. This is the household floor plan that is the long-term, or excuse me, the skilled care or long-term care Alzheimer's and dementia unit. And this one was the trickiest floor plan. And again, we have units positioned around the perimeter of the floor plan, and all in the center are the common areas. So anytime you exit your apartment, you can see something happening in the community area or the commons area, and you can choose whether you want to be a part of the activity or you can keep walking to the next one. So we'll go into that in a second. Let's go to the next floor plan, or next slide, excuse me, Rob, thank you. All right, so these images are showing that farmhouse aesthetic that we used for the overall design concept. And it's showing you right as you enter the community what you're greeted by and how this feels. This is all part of that you can see on the left is the bistro right in the lobby area. So you can have a seat and have some smoothies in the front lobby and linger. And then it leads you beyond to the club lounge and main dining room. You can go to the next plan or the next slide. And this is showing you those common areas. This is on the right, the main restaurant. So it serves both assisted living and independent living. But the beauty of this floor plan is that all of this area is rated as an I2 occupancy, and it is welcome for any of the residents who live in the building anywhere in the skilled care or the independent living to come and join in the center and be free to join in on any activity. So this restaurant is open to all residents. And the image on the left is showing the club lounge, which again is open to all residents. And it isn't your typical club lounge, but go to the next slide. I'm talking fast, Rob, so I meet under the time frame that you've given. On this next is showing the wellness center. And the wellness center is unique to the plan in that we integrated and merged the physical therapy, or the therapy that is the licensed therapy, mixed with the typical wellness entity that is serving the independent living and assisted living. And usually there's a stigma attached to joining these spaces, and so-and-so doesn't want to work out in the same area where they're seeing, you know, so-and-so assisted by a therapist. But in the image on the right, you can see as you stand in the wellness center, you see beyond, and you can see the therapy area over here. So you might know, you might have a friend that had a knee replacement and they're getting therapy right there, and you know them. You can go and join and talk to them and be, it's again, once again, activated in this space. Go to the next slide. These images show the capture the memory care or the skilled care memory care household. And these images are hopefully trying to portray a home-like aesthetic, even though we're in that architectural element of that farmhouse design, and we've got higher end areas as well as lower key or more residential. And this was really, really important to us to capture in this memory support areas, to give a very home-like dining room or kitchen to the space. And as you stand in the kitchen or in that dining room, looking beyond, you can see the kitchen beyond. This is a full service kitchen with a pantry behind it. So technically, they don't need to rely on the main commercial kitchen to do anything, cook and prep or anything. Everything can happen in that kitchen right there with the care providers in this household. They don't ever need to leave this household to accommodate that. Oh, Rob, you're switching my slide. All right. And this last slide is showing the important parts of the skilled care resident unit and how we addressed the charting area in the unit, as well as the toilet queuing from the bed into the bathroom and addressing hazards. Is this my last slide, Rob? I believe it is. So in this last slide, you're seeing the visual to show on the right, the skilled care or long-term care living room leading into the dining room. And the image on the left is your first visual as you enter from the front door of this household. So this is what you're greeted by as you enter this home-like setting for the long-term care. And so this is what we're capturing here.
I'll give you one more, Jill.
Oh, one more. Perfect. Okay. So in this slide, what we wanted to show is that regardless, we're trying to show the corridor view and how when you exit your apartment in the skilled care, you're greeted by all the common areas off on the left, and you can join in on any activity. And it doesn't feel like a long, dark corridor. Not that anyone's corridors are long, dark, but it's very easy to navigate, through the space. And hopefully this image, we took the photography so that you could see the slight seams on the ceiling. We didn't want to blur that out. We want you to see that because that's the acoustic treatment. And all of these vaulted spaces, all of these spaces, all are treated with acoustics. So that it might appear to be a hard ceiling like you would have at your home or have in other spaces, but we did not want a noisy atmosphere, and we wanted to recognize that everyone might be having hearing aids. We don't want that noise, but we want some white noise going on, but we want to be able to have nice conversations and each to be heard, each resident to be able to have nice conversations as they go through these spaces. Rob, there's so much I didn't cover, but if you have any questions.
That's all right. We'll have time at the end for
okay.
I hope. Yeah, Jill, thank you. Great project. I think, some of the jury comments, in particular, we felt like this project was designed completely by one person. And we know it wasn't, right? But when you look at the planning, the architecture of the outside, the interior design, even the landscaping, it all tells one consistent story. So on a project of this size, that's commendable. That your story was strong enough and that everyone was in tune with it, and it really shows. Some of the other jury comments, Jill, were around the middle market aspect, this low cost project that addresses the eminent needs of the middle market. And maybe that's something you can talk about later on. We like the intergenerational room for the college students. Thought that was innovative. Again, something to talk about later on if you have time. The unit layout is good. It feels restorative, great middle market solution, nice memory support, area of skilled nursing. And then one of the jury members was concerned about the acoustics in the high ceiling areas, which you just addressed. We didn't see those lines, I guess. A beautiful project, very well thought out neighborhood plans, modern, bright interiors, all drawing back to the farm theme. So much design, bang for the buck. So a great project. Thank you all on your entire team for that submission.
Thank you. I'm going to turn off my mic now.
And with that, we'll go to our first honorable mention, Ventana with Grant Warner.
Hi, everybody. I'm Grant Warner. Our former firm, D2 Architecture, has merged into HKS as their new senior living practice group. So from here on out, we'll be HKS. We are thrilled and honored to be here, and thank you for recognition in this awards program for Ventana. It's a project that means a lot to us. We put a lot of time into, a lot of passion into. We're very excited about it. Ventana is a life plan community in Dallas, Texas. It's on a site that's near an area called North Park Center. And for those of you who are not from Dallas, it's a pretty hip area of Dallas. It's an urban area. Buckner wanted to try to give seniors a choice to be back into an urban community, come back into town in Dallas. And so North Park Center is a mall, but it's more than a mall. It's one of the few malls in North Texas that continues to thrive. It's also part art museum. So it's a very hip place to be. And for Buckner to be able to find a property that close to North Park Center was pretty much a coup. And so if you go to the next slide, please, Rob. The site was the last open parcel in a larger mixed-use development in the Lincoln district. It's next to other mixed-use areas. It's next to hotels. There's another assisted living down the street, but it's a site that was of a particular challenge. The developers had tried to put office buildings there. Oh, sorry, not too soon. Had tried to put hotels there, tried to put office buildings there, but because access was challenging, vehicular access was challenging, they were never able to succeed. But what Buckner recognized pretty brilliantly was that a life plan community would not need that level of access, might enjoy a little bit of seclusion down this side street, might enjoy a little bit more privacy, at the same time enjoying the benefits of being connected to the urban community around it and the proximity to North Park Center. And as a third point, being on a highly visible corner, getting their name out there for the Buckner Retirement Services and Buckner Ministries organization. So we tried for a while to get one building to work. It wasn't working. We pretty quickly switched to a twin tower scheme. And we were kind of inspired by a story Frank Gehry told about his dancing house project in Prague. He described the two masses as Fred and Ginger dancing together. And so we started to think of ours also as Fred and Ginger as they danced around on the site. To get the amount of programming and space, we turned them at angles, and then to try to minimize the number of units that look across at each other, then we slid them apart, and then we canted the ends to try to really increase the amount of dramatic views, because once we got up and above the 4th and 5th floors, there really is some stunning views for senior living in Dallas, Texas. Views of downtown, views of North Park Center, views of University Park and East Dallas. So we started to think of these two towers as Fred and Ginger as they danced in an unusual arrangement on the site. It's a life plan community, so there's lots of different functions stacked inside. A very complex amount of stacking with assisted living over independent living and independent living over memory support and rehab. One of the most important things to Buckner was to bring greenhouse homes to the Dallas area. Buckner, as far as I know, is still the only operator of greenhouse homes in Texas. And so this was very important to bring that model of care to Dallas. And in this opportunity, it was a unique challenge because we needed to work it into a mixed use type building in a vertical format. And so the greenhouse homes, even though they weren't trademarked ultimately as greenhouse homes, are designed to the greenhouse home standards and are worked into the North Tower. And there are 4 of them for flexibility. Those homes also then inspired the design of the memory support and the rehab areas as well. Go to the next slide, please. There's a variety of dining services and amenity spaces worked into the community. It's a vertical format, so a lot of them, we tried to concentrate as many of those amenities as possible, especially for independent living on the 4th floor. And interestingly enough, the main kitchen is not on the ground floor, the main kitchen is on the 4th floor to better serve and ensure quality for the dining services on 4, as well as put it in the middle between other levels of service. So food can be supported to other kitchens above and below the 4th floor. Next slide, please. One of the fun things about this library, we realized that, and I'm going to show you on the next slide, there's a light well in the center of the building. And so instead of blocking those views and losing that light, the interior designer IDA was able to create this see-through library that I think is just stunning. Next slide, please. And because there were so many programmatic spaces required, and this was on a tight site, we cut a light well through the center of the building down through 4 stories to bring more daylight to a lot more amenity spaces, to various levels of care that didn't have as much access to daylight. And at night, there's a floating constellation in the middle of the space that can change colors and create some visual interest. Next slide, please. To bring more green space to the project, we tried to terrace in different, because again, since it's vertical, we tried to terrace in and bring the landscape up to different levels. And one of the largest spaces is on the 5th floor, above some of the common spaces between the 2 towers. And this is a view on the left, is one of the amenities that's on that large roof deck, the putting green. The image in the upper right, you can start to see that light well beginning and descending down into the building to bring more light to more spaces. And then there's on the lower right, one of the assisted living terraces on their level. Next slide, please. It has an indoor pool and a large wellness center. Buckner is very passionate about their wellness programs, and their wellness directors are pretty stellar in creating wellness programs to get more seniors to come to these classes, as well as use the fitness centers and amenities that are there. So this is a senior-friendly pool on this tight site. And so you can kind of see some of the floor-to-floor heights were a challenge, but we tried to use a more dramatic ceiling to try to avoid some of the scale issues and feel of those tight floor-to-floors. Next slide, please. The apartments are pretty stunning. They have wraparound glass in almost every apartment, floor to ceiling, wall to wall. And in the greenhouse homes, there's, as you can see, they have the required overhead lift track. And we tried really carefully to blend several different ideas, including barn doors that cross the lift track, and then blending the lift track into the frame of the door so that it was a little more subtle. And then in the shower, there was always the conflict of getting the lift track into past the shower curtain. So instead of behaving like a magician with 2 of those rings that they magically somehow are able to spread apart, it has a telescoping shower rod to allow it to pass by. Next slide, please. This is another one of the dining venues that's on level 4. This is the casual cafe. So it's open longer hours and has a different menu to offer residents more choice, as well as some outdoor space to enjoy views of downtown Dallas. Next slide. This is the Sky Lounge up at the top of the building, the top of the South Tower. That's for resident use. Next slide, please. And then this is a view of there's 2 separate entrances, as well as a 3rd entrance for services and for the parking garage that are all underground. This entrance right here is for most of the licensed services, the healthcare services. But this kind of gives you an idea of this is the road on the right, is the limited access street, which worked out perfectly for a life plan community because we just don't have that much traffic that an office building probably would have required. Next slide, please.
All right, thank you, Grant.
Sure, thank you.
Certainly, every one of these projects deserves more than 5 or 6 minutes, right? They deserve an hour each. They deserve a visit, to really explore. But we'll do what we can in the next 30 minutes to get through a few more projects. But this project was certainly notable for its urban setting. I'll say that I think 5 of our 11 finalists were urban solutions, which was strikingly different than past years, and really made me happy to see so many senior living projects being brought to urban areas. So hopefully that's a trend we see to continue. And certainly Buckner did a fantastic job here. Particularly, we were impressed with really the building party, given the site, how it was placed and how the building was broken, as Grant described, two buildings sort of dancing together. Is really very elegant when you study the floor planning and the stacking diagram. And the stacking diagram was really critical to the jurors being able to understand this project. It gave us understanding simple floor plans would not have given us, although they were provided as well. So really elegant solution on the site with building party, a great mix of interior and exterior spaces, although it's in Dallas and, sure, it's hot. A ton of different exterior spaces that the residents can use of a variety of different types, different levels of engagement. So really, really strong there. Again, exterior of the building is beautiful, and impressed by the ability to get outside and shading opportunities outside for residents. We appreciate the residential feel of the interiors with the modern exterior. And really, the interior are exquisitely crafted and evoke a level of luxury that screams Dallas. So this really high rise is really very contextual for senior housing where it's located. The interiors and exteriors speak well to each other. The artwork is unique and well integrated, and there's very thoughtful acoustic solutions given its urban environment and its adjacency to the roadway. So on a really challenging site, a really beautiful and unique project. So thank you, Grant, and your team. And next is Baptist Community. I'd like to ask Greg to speak about this. Greg, you're on mute.
There we go. Is that much better?
Thank you.
Depends on what I say. Well, yeah, thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity to kind of showcase the project here in Amarillo, Texas. I'm Greg Hunteman with Pi Architects. We're based in Austin, Texas. Do projects kind of in a variety of states. The project in front of us, so this is kind of the culmination of an 8-year master plan. You can kind of go to the next slide if you'd like. It kind of shows a little bit more of that. It's a culmination of an 8-year master plan to reposition an existing campus for a large not-for-profit. They have this community and then have ownership interests within the local hospital, so they're very healthcare wellness focused. They also own a variety of gyms in the community. So the community center, which is kind of at the top right, is this project here, which has kind of become the heart of the project. We did the initial memory care replacement on the bottom right, which was kind of 4 small houses. The nursing home replacement on the left, which was 8 small houses. And then converted what was the original nursing home, which is the AL conversion and expansion, and then renovated the other buildings on campus. But the community center really is kind of the heart and the focus of the campus as a whole for what they're doing there. We kind of step back and work closely with the board, the staff, the residents, and the community to kind of work through kind of how they were kind of seeded within the community itself, kind of how they were currently doing wellness. They were very decentralized in the way they were doing. Each building kind of did their own thing. They weren't very well integrated. They weren't as complex. They weren't really fulfilling all the dimensions of wellness. So they really wanted to think through how they could do that. And they were actually surrounded by the top 3 churches within the Amarillo area there. So kind of on the left, there's the main one. You can see that kind of funky roof. And then to the right, there's a couple. The city park is just above. And then downtown Amarillo is actually 3 blocks to the right, kind of the top right for the design itself. If you want to go to the next one, thank you. So this is kind of the core of it, where we had the old nursing home on the left, an existing independent living building on the right, and where we did kind of the expansion and renovation was an assisted living building, and then again, part of the nursing on the left. So the goal was to create kind of this cool hub that can bring everybody together it was really important for them to not make this feel like it was just for the independent living or the assisted living. It was really available for the nursing residents and even the memory care in some instances to come there. So really thought through the connectivity for the different uses, actually creating a bit of a transportation program so they could actually bring people from the adjacent the adjacent buildings that they had on the campus. And then also wanted to really do their best to kind of bring the inside and the outside together. So really tried to allow all the spaces to flow and integrate very well. If you look at the curved section, that's the middle is kind of the main great room, kind of the hub of the community center. And the gray area to the left is actually the kind of centralized kitchen that actually serves a couple of dining venues. We have the bistro up front, the cafe in the back there, and then kind of connect to more of the multi-purpose activity spaces that we have kind of to the right in more of the peachy color there. But wanted to be able to flow those spaces. They do a lot of inviting the outside community as well into their buildings. They had an older kind of cafe that was very popular, and they wanted to make sure that the new dining venues really encourage the adjacent community to come in there. We have the clinic to the left, which is the blue, which actually provides both outside and within the community. They really wanted to think through how sick residents would come in and not kind of impact the other residents. So that was real important to them. Probably the most unique part of the project is what's called the conservatory, which is the middle in the green. Initially, they were thinking through the concept of having an indoor pool that was kind of somewhat in this area. And as we really analyzed the utilization and how that would work, we kind of slowly got to the point of trying to figure out what can we use that space for that would be a little bit better for the overall community and would also take advantage of the connectivity to the outside. And Amarillo is kind of interesting. They actually have, it's very hot and very cold. So they have pretty extreme environments. So the goal was to create an interior environment that would feel like a park, but then connect to the community center with a variety of activities inside, and then had the wellness courtyard off to the back that then will also have adjacent connectivities. And then the top right is kind of the gym, fitness, aerobic spaces that we have for the building itself. And on the right is more of the prayer garden there. I'm going to go to the next slide. Here, this kind of showcases kind of the different spaces. We wanted to have a very public central plaza up front. They actually are envisioning doing farmers market there. They actually do tent revivals. So the layout is actually designed to have poles that can go in, and they bring specialized kind of tent structures in to kind of house those events. And then also has the connectivity with the independent living building on the right, which has some outdoor dining and then connects to the building itself. You can see the conservatory that's kind of half kind of grayed out, I guess you could say, in the middle, and then the connection to the wellness courtyard, which has additional kind of variety activities. We have an outdoor aerobics lawn, a greenhouse, and a variety of kind of spaces out there. There's a rendering that will show that. And then the prayer garden on the right, which is a little bit more of a choir introspective space for the residents as they kind of deal with some of the aging issues that they're working with. If you want to go to the next one. So the image on the top right shows the original building that was there, which was actually a kind of an older, small assisted living building that had much more of a healthcare feel to it. And then a tower had been kind of built as a donation for the campus. So the goal was to kind of utilize that tower and then reposition and add on to the original assisted living building that was there. And then there's an existing independent living building to the right, but then really create a very inviting exterior kind of communal space that was inviting for everybody, as you see there. If you want to go to the next slide, it gives you a little bit more of an aerial view into that courtyard. And so here, wanted to provide a variety of shading options where we have the trellises for seating. A lot of staff come to this area, so they really wanted to provide space that wasn't just for the families and residents, but also the staff. A water feature to make it a little bit more tranquil. Behind that is the multi-purpose room, the big community space that actually flows outside so that they can actually pull some of the larger events outside for that. And then the roof that you see on the right is actually outdoor covered dining for the independent living building that was added as well. I'm going to go to the next slide. So this is an image of the conservatory, which really became the hub and the heart of the community center as a whole. This is set up as you were just coming off of the cafe into the space. So this would be the view into the conservatory itself, some large trees within it to provide some more of the dappled light, makes it a little bit more comfortable. There's actually a lower covered space so that it wouldn't just be this large space. You had a variety of kind of areas you could go to, whether it be a larger event or smaller areas for the residents. Lighting, we wanted this to be just as neat during the evening. So actually a variety of lighting there, some string lights. And then they also have a grand scheme to actually create just amazing Christmas events in this space too, with some large Christmas trees there. If you go to the next one. This is the wellness courtyard that's right behind it. So there again, just want to provide a variety of outdoor areas. There's a fireplace to the right, kind of the shared space in the middle with another water feature there. We have some raised gardens in the foreground and the aerobics in the back. So the goal was, again, that the indoor and the outdoor could just flow together. Super comfortable for the residents and the staff and the families. If you want to go to the next slide. So as far as the architectural character, we really wanted a variety of feels. The campus itself has a lot of different styles within the campus. And the thought was that this was a space that would really bring everything together. It was very eclectic, had a variety of styles, was very comfortable. And then also would feel like it was a little bit more of a renovated space that you feel in, that you would experience in downtown Amarillo. So the kind of the front courtyard is to your right, and then this is kind of the core. The other thing we did is we put all the administrative spaces on the second floor so we could have all the residents on the first floor. So the stairs you're seeing here are actually going to the second floor admin spaces that could very easily kind of drop into the main community center space that we have there. I'm going to go to the next slide. They want to have a variety of dining options. One of the big problems that they had on campus is there wasn't a space where the staff could come and grab a quick bite to eat and then have healthy food on top of it. So they wanted to have a space where you could easily come through, grab food, sit down, enjoy it, go into the conservatory that's actually just behind this space, or go out to the front. So just a variety of opportunities there. If you go to the next one, I think it's is more of the bistro. So at the front, they really wanted to provide the variety of dining options, but actually have a little bit more of an upscale space that would be a little bit more typical of what you'd find in downtown Amarillo. There's a lot of kind of rehab and repurposing that's happening there right now. So really wanted to have the ability to have a space that could have much more of a formal feel like it does now with the tablecloths, but then can also set up so that you could take them off and it felt like a coffee shop in the morning. So really flex there, you know, steak dinners on Friday night. So really a good kind of flexible space that would flow. And here their goal also is for the outside community to come in and enjoy, you know, time with the residents that they have there. Go to the next one. Yep.
It's all right, Greg. Anything else you want to add? It does.
No, I probably wouldn't look too quickly, but no, the goal was to just create a really neat kind of building that would connect everything, would really honor the 7 dimensions of wellness, and just do our best to have a positive impact on the residents. And I think this will be a nice kind of, I guess, kind of final project for the community.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, you know, the jury really felt strongly about the success of the project based on the connection of indoor and outdoors. You see it throughout. You know, you've completely perforated the exterior walls to create meaningful connections, and every single space is utilized both inside and outside. So there is no differentiation really between inside and outside, it seems, and particularly at the conservatory, where you've brought outside lighting and outside trees into the building. So we really thought that was great. And again, your location in Amarillo, so you're in the your urban environment, and there's community around you, and you've again sort of this perforation that allows the community to come in. It's really applauded. Applaud that commitment. Also, you come into accessibility of the outdoors. Felt like you were changing lives of the residents based on these improvements. We enjoyed your layouts and feel they were all very solid. There's thoughtful solutions for the operations, and your use to incorporate an ops specialist in your programming was noted. Space adjacency, support program goals. The conservatory is especially well done and comfortable, human scaled, and the bistro as well does not feel like skilled nursing. You could really put that anywhere. You dealt with the inclement weather, your hot weather, but you still recognize that people want to be outside, and you've given them multiple opportunities to do that in many ways. And your narrative provides a clear story and message. This is a handsome project that serves as a connection hub between different portions of the campus and larger community. The quality of each interior and exterior space is high. So applause, congratulations, great project. Submission tips, for future projects, anyone who's submitting, note that these are all renderings, right? This project is unbuilt. So we're at that point now where we can create renderings that it's really tough to distinguish whether that's real or not. So we applaud the use of visualization here, probably what you use to describe your project to your client and residents as well. So thank you. And next, Bruce, to talk about Friendship Village.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Rob, and thanks to this great organization, SAGE. I am Bruce Hurowitz, principal at Merlino Design Partnership, based in Philadelphia. It just seems that our area, our state, is definitely in the crosshairs right now for the whole nation. Unlike most of the other projects that we've just looked at, our project is a much smaller scale project, a complete interior renovation, a good amount of reconfiguration, but doesn't have the scale and the grandeur of a lot of the other projects. So there was a lot of attention placed on a lot of detail, that the residents could really touch and feel and get up close to. So it's a little bit different kind of a project. Truly gratifying to receive this honorable mention. It was a very challenging project. Sometimes the smaller renovation reconfiguration projects pose the most difficulties, and that was certainly the case in this particular project. So if you go to the next slide. So Friendship Village, which is part of Friendship Senior Options, is a well-established, mature retirement community in the northwest suburb of Chicago. As you can see, it is not a revolutionary design. It is kind of a cross corridor situation that was designed in the 60s and 70s. This was built in the mid 70s. Quite nicely, what they did was they created a new entrance edge to the community, and they put almost like a village feel to it as you drove in along the water edge. And so what that really created was a kind of a disparity between the existing campus that I just mentioned, along with the newer campus. The newer campus had a lot of nicer, newer amenities, had more open space, had well-appointed and well-programmed program spaces and dining venues, and then the older campus was in great need. And so Morrison Community Living created this interdiscipline team, of which we were part of and we led. And through that effort with architects, engineers, designers, food service professionals, we kind of reinvented the older part of the campus to try to kind of marry it to the newer part of the campus. This is just an existing plan. It was a very straightforward plan. Basically, at the intersection of every node was an event, and in between the courtyards was infilled of fairly unusually shaped spaces. And in this case, what is labeled Sheffield was this large dining space that our first part of our efforts were geared towards. If you go to the next slide. It was a very straightforward dining experience. It was a 3-meal-a-day buffet service. The resident entered through an adjacent space, checked in at the POS, walked through more of a queuing food line situation. And then the dining spaces kind of wrapped around that. There was absolutely no visual connection between the servery and the food service area. The other thing I'd like to point out in this building, both in plan and in volume, there was not, I don't think, any 90-degree angles. This was an extremely unusual piece of architecture. And as a firm, we wouldn't fight this type of architecture. We really have to celebrate it. I know that's a term used often, but we really needed to work with it and embellish it and not work against this architecture because it was so kind of a part of the fabric of this community. You just go to the next slide. So what we see here is just a colorized version. Basically, we're taking this entire space from the entrance sequence through a 3-story atrium space. And as you move to the right in the plan, every color basically indicates a different experience that you'd be walking through. These spaces can be accessed from multiple directions from IL corridors that are kind of converging in this space. So we had to account for arriving at spaces from different locations. Obviously, all of this planning was pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. So we've gone back and done some strategies to try to, make some of these spaces work in a post-COVID world. But going from left to right, you had a cafe experience, you had a grab and go, you had a bar, pub, and then you had really the first phase, which was this kind of really destination mosaic restaurant, which had in the center of it this unusual entire cooking suite that is basically although we had a full commercial kitchen, there is a complete cooking suite with chefs that are out. It's not a center stage, it's not a window looking into the kitchen, it's a full kitchen operation. And try putting that into a 45-year-old building with aging mechanicals and unusual architecture, worrying about acoustics and using all the technology available to us. It was a real testament to, I think, all the professionals that worked on this project. Not only do we have dining that wraps around this experience, and you'll see that in photographs in a minute, but we also created and kind of coined the phrase, the chef's arcade, that you could really be, it's what started out as a chef's table became an entire environment that was completely flexible, and actually going back is going to help us with some COVID issues. But we had a teaching kitchen, we had a private dining room, we had multiple opportunities for residents to be, quote, eating in the kitchen, in addition to having access to the full dining room. We took a look at some ADA bathrooms and some other support functions, but that was really the prime focus of the project. The interiors were very rich in palette, rich in materiality, a little bit of a special attention to joinery. Some spaces were lower. We wanted residents to be able to really get a sense of a high quality restaurant experience. They had done a lot of front end research, and the folks at Friendship Senior Options wanted everything to be data driven. And so they had discovered through surveys that residents they wanted a much higher level of dining experience, and they were willing to pay for it. And so we wanted that experience to happen right as they entered. Rich materials, hostess seating. What you're looking at now is kind of the beginning of this chef's arcade as you walk in. If you go to the next slide. Off of this space, there is multiple kind of chef's tables, and the chef would come over, and they're in that cooking suite. They come over and they really would dedicate part of their night to your group or your table. Off to the right and to the left out of the picture are adjoining spaces that are separated by glazing systems. One had a teaching kitchen, this is the private dining room, which also has access from other spaces. And then you could see that way we were able to separate those spaces and then have them all function as one. If you go to the next slide, this is the other side, and you could see you're now in the space with the door shut, and they've had guest chefs here. This whole operation can rotate and go out into the chef's arcade, so that if the classes were larger, and they are using this extensively. A lot of times we've done some exhibition kitchens and exhibition cooking, and they're less successful because they're not programmed. This was programmed on the front end, and it was extensively programmed up until things changed, with COVID. And it is really an integral part of this whole dining experience. Go to the next slide. And the heart of it is this cooking suite. Again, as funky as the architecture was, we wanted to respond as well to the shape of this space. Its shape is based mostly on program, but we had a lot of fun creating the spaces. It's not a space that residents will come up to and get food, although I guess they could. It's just, it's a chefs in the round. Everybody from all vantage points can see the chefs at work. And I think you'll see that in the next image. So this is a stage photograph, but this is the type of activity you would see during the day. The dining is off to the right, the chef's arcade is off to the left. And it's just an integral part of every night activity in the dining room. Next slide. You'll see, residents preparing. They're also able to have some instruction at this area as well, not only in the teaching kitchen, if there was nutrition classes and things like that, that this edge of the suite could be used for that as well. Go to the next slide. And this is as you can see, the main dining space, and I alluded it to in the very first image, which was this kind of unusually shaped, even the fascias of some of the softening, that's all original, these kind of odd angles. And so we created that circular element in the center of the space as a two-sided wood stone oven so that, residents could see that. Obviously, wherever they sit, they have a good access and view into the kitchen. It's tough to see, but right along the back edge of that window, we created this screening elements because we wanted to give some sense, which I think is helpful now with social distancing, but some sense of privacy where they could have kind of smaller gatherings in a more intimate space, not just out in this open space. This is just looking back the other way. We paid a lot of attention to acoustics. All those wood panels have a very high acoustic rating. We wanted to bring in some of the local kind of materials. We have some flagstone and some, the name of the restaurant's called Mosaic, I think mostly because we use this mosaic motif, and sometimes form follows function or art follows. I'm not really sure what the rest of that saying is though. If you go to the next slide. This is the next phase, which actually has been implemented. This is the Bluestone Pub. Both spaces have a plan that we're working on now, which is to do al fresco dining. They both spill out into a courtyard. But this is a kind of an anti-space before that dining experience. Again, you can arrive at it from multiple sides. This is a rendering. There were some structural issues, and so we kind of made something out of some ill-placed structural columns when you move some walls. So this has just been completed. This in the next phase will be the cafe and then the grab and go.
All right,
A couple of takeaways. I just had a couple of takeaways that I think the success on this project was data driven, was really demanded by FSO. They really, before we did anything on design, there was an incredible amount of time on the front end with surveys, finding out about resident satisfaction and finding out about profitability and about waste and about usage of the dining facilities. And that really fed into the program. We had pretty high resident involvement. You can't rip apart the middle of this community without interrupting the residents' lives, and they were integral to this design. They had plenty of opinions, but they were met with, they were always included in the planning process. They also had excellent construction management, which I think is so key when you want to embark a project that is in the heart of this community. And it's actually, you can't get by. So we had to do a lot of temporary passageways and things like that. We also had to be very responsive. This is a 45-year-old building. There was a lot of issues that came up. And so between all the disciplines, we had to be very responsive and quick to answer problems as they started to unwrap some of these 45-year-old structures. The results are much higher resident usage, higher satisfaction. Prior to COVID, there was a lot more family use from the outside. Prospective residents could even use it, so that was a good feeder to get people accustomed to the community. A lot less waste. They went from a buffet system to a service kind of a setup. And then lastly is we've started to think about it in a post-COVID review. And because we created so many of these joined but separate spaces, I think it sets up well for Friendship Village to be able to navigate the next phase of reopening of their community.
That's great. Thank you again, Bruce. It's an awesome project. Certainly a project that, as a renovation could have been submitted to the EFA remodel renovation competition, and maybe we'll do it there as well. But it certainly warrants attention here at the design showcase as well. And I think the jury was impressed by the level of transformation, both visually and programmatically. They were very significant. Bruce touched on a lot of things that you see in the images, but again, in particular, when you read through the submission, the programming, the teaching kitchen, the interactive resident programming, the change management they use, the collaborative process, were all part of the story that the jury felt made this project very successful. The collaboration was great. Renovations are challenging. This was a huge success. And as Bruce mentioned, the reduction in food waste to dollars, or dollars from food waste, was integral to the story. Obviously, great aesthetics and a great variety of aesthetics for the residents. And they've got really a whole palette of new places to be now in the community, which is awesome. I want to move to our last project, but we are at the top of the hour. So the last project is Meadow Haven, and it's a great project. So all of our panelists are able to stick around for another 15 minutes. So if our attendees have time, I would encourage you to stay around for Lara's presentation of Meadow Haven. Again, another great project. Lara?
Thank you, Rob. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lara Slavkin. I'm a partner and interior designer with RDG Planning and Design, and we're very honored to be part of this group of presenters here today. I'm talking about Meadow Haven, the Rehabilitation Center in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. And to give you a large, big picture project overview, RDG Planning and Design did both the architecture and interior design. It was almost 48,000 square feet, a single story, 44-bed short-term rehab building. And it's fitting that we start on a photograph of the dining component, because food in general for this building had some very significant importance, as well as how it would extend to the rest of the community. And I'll elaborate on that as we go through. If we could go to the next slide. Thanks, Rob. So a very early initiative from the project team and Meadow Haven was to pursue WELL certification. And this was because it really aligned with Meadow Haven's organizational goal in really creating a forward-thinking and healthy driven culture position for baby boomers. So it was really a substantial component for the repositioning as a whole. In 2019, the project received WELL Gold certification. And at the time, I don't know, it's been over a year now since that occurred, but at the time it was the only skilled nursing building in the world that had received gold certification. So it was really exciting for the project. And just very high level, looking at WELL holistically, about a third of the standard really focuses on the design, construction, and the materials used within the space. Another third looks at the operations of the building, and then that final third is more on the HR and the policies. So not only looking at the built environment, but really carrying it through moving forward on a day-to-day basis. We could go to the next slide. So as it's popping up, you're seeing an aerial view of the community. The red box highlights where The rehab center, or as it's named, the Restore building, is currently located. Just north of that, you'll kind of see a building shaped like an H, if you will. That was the original skilled nursing building that was built in the late 1960s and kind of the start of the Menno Haven community. It was important on the positioning of this building, basically because it's right there at the boundary or the perimeter of the start of the community, and really became an icon for Menno Haven. This was also the start of a large repositioning project called Project Genesis. So in addition to this building, there are 2 AL memory care houses, as well as a community center, service center, and a skilled nursing building, a new skilled nursing building. We could go to the next slide. So more specifically, kind of honing in on the Restore building itself, as I mentioned, food was a big piece to this project. So the central kitchen is located currently in this Restore building. So allowing that food deliveries and large truck deliveries are all coming to that building, and then distributed throughout the rest of the campus in smaller box trucks. So not only was that important, but initially just the food component, healthy living, healthy lifestyle, implementing healthy food choices was important for this building, but then that also is being distributed throughout the rest of the campus to roughly 6 other dining locations. So that healthy lifestyle has been implemented throughout. We could go to the next slide. So looking specifically, just big picture at the building itself, there are 2 neighborhoods with 22 beds each. That's the purple guest suites that you see there. The green spaces are what I would consider more of the amenity, social engagement areas. The light orange is therapy, wellness, and clinic. The salmon color, if you will, is office and support spaces. The gray highlights back of house along with that central kitchen on the west part of the building, and then the yellow circulation. We can go to the next slide. So now to speak specifically to the design itself and some of the main elements that were expressed early on in the design. This was intended to be very hospitality and technology driven. One of the quotes very early on was, "This is not your grandmother's nursing home." They wanted this not to feel like your home, but instead have that very high energy hospitality feel from the exterior and throughout the building. So speaking specifically to this image in the exterior, they wanted to use a lot of glass, aluminum, local granite materials. You'll also see throughout their opportunities for the curves, the transparency of the full height windows, a lot of texture within the elements. This specifically, the porte cochere, that round element that you see there actually lights up. It could be any color of the rainbow. Oftentimes you'll see it be the Menno Haven green that is throughout their campus. But so even at night, it can glow and again, have that iconic feel as you enter into the community. Next slide, please. So as you enter in, I spoke about the high energy, the color, the hospitality that was implemented as soon as you enter into the space. Again, those large windows, the connection to the outdoors, the biophilic elements that are implemented throughout the building. Next slide. Popping up here, but it's the same image as shown before. So the dining venue, again, oh, we might have to go back one. Sorry, Rob. But I can speak to that. So a lot of the bright pops of color, high energy, again, the connection to the exterior. Also, I'm sorry, Rob, if we go back one more.
Sorry, I thought, Lara, I think we're seeing different things.
Oh,
So I'm on the slide of the dining, hopefully.
Yeah, yes, nope, that's where I'm speaking to. Thank you.
Okay.
So interestingly enough, I don't know that I've ever had the opportunity to use orange baffles on a senior living project, but again, with the high energetic pops of color, being mindful of the acoustics of the space, and just adding some interesting elements throughout. This was a unique opportunity to be able to do so. Another talking point regarding the dining space is just the variety of seating. You'll see booths in the background, 4 top, typical standard table sizes. There are farm tables within the space that can be moved together, as well as height adjustable tables for those who might be in wheelchairs. So really offering a lot of flexibility, and then that connection to the exterior, which you'll see in a few slides ahead. Okay, next slide. So the therapy space of the Restore building, obviously they wanted to make this state of the art. A lot of, again, that connection to the exterior. What you are seeing through the windows there is the interior courtyard of the building that also is used for therapy. And then those high pops of color, the acoustic clouds that are used on the ceiling, just again, some really unique design elements that were used to continue that hospitality tech feel, if you will. Next slide. So the interior of the building itself had an outdoor courtyard, if you will. So there's a connection right there on the right-hand side to the dining venue. So you could easily transition outdoors. You could sit in a lounge chair around the fire pit, or eat a meal at one of the dining tables. And then the remainder of the courtyard is walking trails and paths specifically designed for your therapy journey. So ELA Group, the landscape architects out of Pennsylvania, really did a stellar job of creating these therapeutic elements where the walking paths are made of different materials. We have the bridge that you see there in the photograph. We have another area where there are a few steps. So again, even being able to transition outdoors for your therapy was really a high focus here, even a putting green, so you can continue your golf game. Within the guest suites themselves, we had a couple unique elements above the bed, the artwork. So all of the artwork throughout the project had a heavy emphasis on local artists and local photography. But this system here that's shown, the actual frame itself slides up and over to reveal the med gas that is housed within that wall. So adding a nice aesthetic to the room, but obviously functional as well. And then a lot of focus on the light within the space. You'll see the diffused window as well as the full height view window with a really low sill. So there's a lot of engagement and connectivity to the outdoors. To highlight even a well feature here, 59, the surface design focuses a lot on the LRV values, the light reflectancy values of paint colors, even on the walls. And typically the standard reads that you should have a low LRV within a sleep area, but obviously working with Well, educating them on senior living and the use of this space, there's a lot more that happens in a guest suite outside of just sleeping. So we were able to work with them and increase that value so it would be appropriate, not only for sleep, but also for eating, visiting with friends, receiving care. Next slide. And this is the final image. So as you saw on that floor plan, there are 2 neighborhoods, each of which had a small living room, lounge area, nice social engagement opportunity. And something to highlight here, really another feature of Well, the right to light, that not only do you have operable windows throughout your entire project, but also that those occupied spaces are within 25 feet of view windows. So that was really important to emphasize. And I think the photography really shows it well, just all of that connection to the outdoors and those large expansive windows. But overall, the project, we really wanted to encourage daylight as the primary source of light and offer that visual comfort. So that was implemented throughout.
Great. Thank you, Lara. Wonderful project. You know, the jury really applauds the commitment of the design team and the owner to the Well program and all it took to achieve that certification. And not only for some of the resident spaces, but driving down and getting into the areas for staff as well, and considering staff retention and staff needs was really important. The submission was really extremely well written and highlighted a multitude of important design elements. The certification is outstanding. Of course, we're impressed that that you created a custom scorecard for the project that'll allow you to replicate this in the future. And you noted that you had incorporated wellness features of other industries and brought them to your project. We thought was very interesting as well. So again, not to rush through this project and at all, or any of the projects, but there's lots of opportunities, particularly with Meadow Haven, for future investigation. It happened that at the jury in January, one of the jurors asked, "Oh, it'd be great to see a POE on this project, a post-occupancy evaluation on this project, since it's been open a year." And it happened to be that day, Sage was actually at Meadow Haven doing a post-occupancy evaluation, which is now published. We've had great fortune to be paired up with J&J Flooring for the last few years, and that has allowed us to do a really excellent job of going to a community with a really investigative, excellent team, multiple discipline team to look into how buildings are performing. So that POE is now on the Sage website. It talks about the team, of course, it talks about the design goals, and then it measures how the building is doing along each of the design goals that have been stated at the beginning of the project. And then because we have a multidisciplinary team, each of those members then has the opportunity and has written about the building from their perspective, such as therapy or food service. So that's accessible to all Sage members as well. So that brings us to the conclusion of our AIA piece of presentation. I do want to take a plug at our next Sage webinar, which again happens to be Meadow Haven, sets the standards for food service through centralization, excuse me. So that's coming up next month. And we do have a few minutes. If anyone has questions, we would certainly like to have the opportunity to answer some. We do have one for Brio, Jill. What is the thought with private resident privacy, excuse me, rooms opening directly onto common spaces like the dining room? Is there any concern with that in your households?
So the thought process on the Brio opening, in what their question is directly related to, is the skilled care portion of the skilled care apartments within those households, and how they're opening right into an activated dining area or community or activity room and that kind of thing. The thought process is that you're not exiting your apartment and greeted immediately by a long corridor or even a short corridor. We're trying to minimize the corridor lengths, and we're trying to really increase the opportunities for socialization for those skilled care residents who are living there. So that's the idea, is that you're not greeted by a wall. Instead, you're greeted by an active space, and you're welcome to come and join or walk on by and go to the next area.
All right, thank you. I mean, Jill, one more question for you. How did you convince the provider, or maybe you didn't convince, but how did the provider come to the fact that IL and AL can share amenities?
So that shared amenities for the overall campus is the very idea of that discussion of what can we do to bring this whole community to the table as a middle market income project. And so the whole design team had to think about what we want to offer as amenity spaces, and then make it available for everyone. So we had to really dial down on what are the very, very expensive amenity spaces that would be great to have, but can't be affordable. And then what are the spaces that are really going to be used day in and day out by both independent living and assisted living, and not be confusing for anyone having any touch of Alzheimer's or memory loss of any kind to navigate, to get to, so have them not be that far away. So those questions were asked on every space, and to integrate assisted living with independent living, to be able to have your neighbor be able to, you know, no matter what their care level is and what their needs are, to be able to go to any space with you and be part of an art class altogether. I do want to say I did not note the cost per square foot. I noted the square footage in the summary, but it landed at $145 a square foot, which is unbelievably hard to get to. That does not include the cost of the land, but it includes FF&E and all other practices in there. And it's just a really hard number to bring to the table to make this project work with and still have the great aesthetic that fits.
You did it well. Yeah, certainly the jury took note of that, and we want you to take some notes on how you did it, and then pass those along to all of us. But thank you all. We don't have any more questions on the table. We are way past our hour, so I want to thank all of our panelists for your time. Thank you for sharing all these great projects, and thank you for all the attendees for sticking around. If you have, hopefully you're still with us. As you leave the webinar, if you could, please take a moment to complete a short survey, consider joining SAGE, and consider watching the next webinar. Thank you all.